Yes. Okay, at 7 o'clock, I will open tonight's meeting and ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Do I have any opening public comment from the board this evening?
I just wanted to mention that the pancake breakfast at the Eagle House this Wednesday has been canceled.
Okay. I think we've been hearing a lot of that last word.
Yeah, right.
Anybody else? A couple of announcements talking about canceled, although it is not official. The meeting is tomorrow to take the official word, but I think the Boys and Girls Club, Are You Smarter Than a Sixth Grader, is going to be postponed, not canceled, but it's not going to be on February 27th as it was being announced, because planning and getting sponsors and teams has been arduous at best given the weather of the last 3 weeks. So we will announce, they will announce, and have me announce when the rain date or snow date, as it were, is. But that will be decided tomorrow night at their board of directors meeting. Also, because of the impending additional snow on Thursday night, the FinCom meeting which would have been televised with the town manager giving the announcement of the budget for FY16 is not going to be held that night. It will be held on next Tuesday in our time slot. So next Tuesday night, the 17th, will be a meeting with the, it's got a co-meeting, right? Or it's going to be the FinCom's meeting? Not that we're going to do anything afterward anyway.
Yeah, it typically would just be the Finance Committee.
Okay, so it'll be the Finance Committee meeting at 7 o'clock, and the primary agenda item will be the town manager's budget presentation. And I do want to announce also, again, and we keep saying this, my continued appreciation for everyone involved in the DPW and all the contractors for the wonderful job, for all the snow removal, the public safety for their work in this, and for everybody maintaining proper traffic control, not leaving the house when you don't need to. I got stuck at a company meeting and got delayed overnight. I was supposed to come back on Sunday, came back yesterday into Logan, and made that trip from Logan to here in the middle of the day, and they really were very, very, very few people on the road, and the road crews all around the state, certainly from here to Logan Airport, did a great job. I would continue to ask, as the reverse 911 call went out to everybody, please check on your neighbors, especially the elderly and anybody who is disabled in any regard, to make sure that they're okay. Anybody who has a fire hydrant near them, please clear it out, and don't take any extra chances. The snow banks are extremely high, visibility is extremely low. The road conditions are, they're very variable. There's a lot of loose stuff still getting blown on the road, so I think we all would like to keep the town as safe as possible with no incidents, and so far we've been able to do that. There have been some minor, vehicle accidents, but nothing of any substance, and that's a good thing. So thank you to everybody involved in that.
They did a great cleanup job today, I thought. The roads look really clear.
Yep. Any public comment from the public? Okay. No appointments. Those were announcements. Update of the goals. Well, I think I'm going to supersede the goals by just trying to get rid of snow before April. I don't have an update because I just got back last night. In case does anybody else have an update on goals? I mean, I realize that although I've been dealing with this topic, really, we are the Board of Selectmen. So if anybody else has any commentary on the goals as they are, please feel free in this.
I personally have forgotten what the goals are,
Okay.
which is
All right.
why it would be helpful to get the goals.
Okay. I will try to send them around again. That'll make the status a lot easier.
That's right. Well, we will remember what they are once we see them.
That's
so
right,
We can't
again.
add another one.
Okay. So we've got item number 2, review and discuss the proposed Tennessee Gas Kinder Morgan pipeline project, the upcoming public meetings, and we will consider the adoption of the resolution of opposing the project as it was submitted several weeks ago. I see we have one of the speakers who are here next week. Would you like to add anything before we discuss? No. Okay. So we have 3 things. First of all, let's do the upcoming public meeting. When is that being rescheduled to?
So
There it is.
the Fitchburg meeting has been rescheduled to February 26th. There is a notice in your packet that has all of the open house dates. They started at the beginning of February. Most of the meetings are, well, in the general area along the route of the pipeline. So I guess the 2 closest to us, obviously the one in Fitchburg on the 26th. On the 25th is the meeting in Berlin. Milford, New Hampshire, the night before, February 24th. That's not too far away. Then the others are further.
All meetings are from 6 to 8 p.m. The one in Fitchburg is at the Fitchburg Memorial Middle School Gymnasium. The one in Berlin is at the Berlin Memorial Elementary School Gymnasium. And the one in Milford is at the Hampshire Dome. And again, all of them 6 to 8 p.m. I would encourage people to attend one of these, if not just for pure information, but if you have an opinion one way or another, that is the location to go to either support or oppose the project. And it is one of the few opportunities so far, and these are all hosted by Kinder Morgan themselves. These are not by any other group.
So if I could mention Elaine Morose, who was one of the individuals who was here to speak to you a couple of weeks ago, she did attend the open house on February 4th in Winchester, New Hampshire. She wrote up her observations of that meeting. I included that in your packet. I sent that out, I think, last week to you. Elaine is unable to be here this evening, but she did want to make sure that you got her feedback. She was fairly disappointed with the meetings, with the lack of information that the representatives of the company had. She felt that she asked some very specific questions and got either real general answers or really no answer, and it was a disappointment because she thought that was the purpose of the open houses, was to get information on the project, and they sent people who didn't seem to be knowledgeable about the project. Hopefully, as these meetings continue, that was the first one, hopefully they will get better. Maybe they'll hear the same questions repeatedly and they will get the answers to those questions, so maybe by the time they get here, they're better informed on the project.
While that may be true, I think historically, at least with the 3 meetings that they've held, that they came before us, they held a meeting, and they were invited to a meeting by our local state representatives and senator. I didn't see any change in the ability to provide information, or more importantly, the desire to provide information. I think their quote, winning play is to just run out the clock. So the reason why I think Ms. Morose was disappointed with those answers is because that's what they're going to do. They're just going to give vague answers, and where they hold all the information. It's not like we can research other places. We can only have the FERC filings for the information, and anything beyond that is in their hands, and that's not been anything forthcoming. So while I'll always say there's a possibility it'll change, I always go with my second sentence, which is the likelihood is not very high.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Bertram.
the lack of transparency from Kinder Morgan is really disturbing. Since the last meeting, I have gone through all the documents on the FERC filing. I have looked at the information online at the Kinder Morgan site and continue to be very disturbed about the lack of information about the impact to parcels in Lunenburg. The actual information regarding the reasons for the, quote, Fitchburg lateral, the lack of information about the impact to the environment, the impact to the parcels, the reasoning behind the need for the pipeline, other than the rhetoric that they've been talking about, is really concerning. And given that fact, I would support a resolution in opposition to the pipeline. However, I do have a couple questions on the draft, and as I said, I'm very concerned about the reason for the what they call the Fitchburg lateral, which is really the Lunenburg lateral, and the reasoning behind the end point of that lateral. But I'm concerned about some of the wording in the draft resolution, because I think we may be, and I'm saying may, be making assumptions, because although I think they're very valid assumptions, I'm not sure they should be in the resolution. And those are the points that say, whereas the completion of the project would create a connection between the proposed Fitchburg lateral and the South Lunenburg lateral, because that's not, although that certainly seems to make sense, that's not the plan that's before them right now. And then the next two statements talk specifically about that lateral. Certainly, logically, it would look like the long-range plan is to connect those 2 points. But I'm just concerned about making that a statement in the resolution, whereas there is no plan at this point to do that.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's take those one at a time. The first one is the South Lunenburg lateral and this proposed Fitchburg lateral. That is I believe, a factual statement. That the project is going to connect the new pipeline with the end point of the existing pipeline that's in Pleasant Street. That is my understanding.
I don't see that on the maps, and there's a statement here, whereas Kinder Morgan has been silent about its plans to create such a connection.
No, that's about the next one.
Okay.
That it would provide them the opportunity to provide a gas service all the way through to Worcester. That's the opportunity.
Okay.
And then they've been silent about that plan, although that in many people's mind is where they're going. If they connect the Mason, New Hampshire projected endpoint, well, not endpoint, but projected main line of the 36-inch main that's going all the way to, where's the endpoint? Drake, thank you. You know, that's going to connect to our existing place, but the next jump would be to.
I don't see a connection to the existing line. There's on the map, there's a blue line, which is the existing lateral, which has an endpoint, and then there's a red line coming down through Townsend that ends in that same proximity, but they do not connect, and that's one of the things that's really puzzling.
Okay.
And I'm sure Sarah can answer that really quickly.
Yeah, my take on that, it was going to go to the Pleasant Street substation, which is where the other pipe goes.
Okay, so that's the reason, so that's the loop, is that substation?
Right, that's where the connection would be.
Okay.
To go there is where I see, because since they would go to an existing pipe. Because if they were just going to serve Fitchburg, they would go there, and if they wanted to go the other way, they need to go there. So, and I don't see it going anywhere else to connect to the connection.
Yes. Just introduce yourself first.
I'm Sarah Kammer. I live on Lancaster Ave. It does not physically, the red line does not on the map exactly connect to the blue line. Or I forget what the colors are on the map. It doesn't look like it physically connects yet, but I do believe it connects to the substation, as you suggested. It's hard to say because it's a county level map that was digitized from, so it could be off as much as it could be even plus or minus 30 feet off in a rate, because it's digitized from such a big map. The resolution of that line has error, so you're right that you can't tell for sure what is going to happen there. And as far as that goes, you can strike whatever you need to from that resolution.
No, I know that.
And this is the substation down here.
Yeah, so that it doesn't connect to the
Although the right-of-way does.
But there's no connection, and that's what's puzzling.
Yeah,
if I was developing a system,
I would say,
Seeing that they would be connected at some
Well,
point.
I would agree,
Right.
but that's,
I would
again,
say
what's-
that's part of the vagueness that
It's-
we're
exactly.
faced with.
Right.
So I think we can add language to, based on plans, it appears that there will be a connection, as opposed to would create a connection. Whereas the completion of the project appears that it would create a connection between the proposed Fitchburg lateral and the South Lunenburg lateral. Because they wouldn't put a pipe and end it. I understand what you're saying. They haven't
You
told
would
us they're
think
going
so,
to.
right.
But if they're going to do a pipe, it's not going to be a bridge to nowhere.
Right.
I think it's the lack of transparency that creates this question that makes me want to support strongly the resolution itself.
Exactly. I
And
would
as
agree.
far as I'm
I would
concerned,
agree.
we can wordsmith it, and I'm okay with that. But as far as I'm concerned, I'd just soon tell them we're opposed to their project and let them tell us the details to change our mind.
Well, I don't know that adopting a resolution that we're specifically stating the reasons that we're opposed to the project, I would like it to be clear why, as to why.
I think if you're going to have one opposed, we should probably state
Why?
the reasons. At least some of them, it could be additional.
So just whereas the completion of the project appears it would create a connection, and I'm fine with that. Because that's one of the things that puzzles me,
Okay,
is
which one?
looking at the
What-
termination points.
What is
of
it
the
you're
project.
looking to change?
The fifth one down?
The fifth one down.
No, that one, but what is the wording that you want?
How did you have it, Bob? Because that was fine
Whereas
with
the
me.
completion of the project appears it would.
Appears to create?
Right.
Or appears to create, that's fine.
Okay.
I think then-
Anybody else have anything else on the first page? On any of the other ones?
I looked at the Bolton resolution, and they had some things that I think might be worth considering adding.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's deal with what's in front of us and we can add. Does
Okay.
anybody have any additions or strikings or
No, I was
changes
fine,
in
I
the
was
first page?
good with everything else.
Okay, so on the second page,
I think I'll make some.
on the second page, the second one, whereas the federal eminent domain powers, it can't be, will be, might be used. We don't know that they're going to use them.
Yeah, may.
Yeah, might, may, sure. Let's put may. May sounds always better. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine
I'm fine with
everything
everything else if everybody else is, and then we'll come back to Phyllis's points here.
These are copies of the Bolton resolution, and I put arrows next to the things that I thought would fit, at least worth discussing.
Okay, we have the
I
first
think
one.
the first, let's just work our way down, and we'll just address the ones you have arrowed. So the first one, we have something similar to that.
Yeah, we have that
Yeah,
one.
there are definitely
Okay,
similarities.
so that one is important. So that's in there already. Our energy challenges, yep, that one's
That
in
one's
here
in
too, the
there
second
already.
one. Let's come back to the third one. Fourth one is very good, I like that one. The environmental threats. Are any of these going through our private lands?
No. They're not going through, well, they're not going through our conservation
Well, we can be
land that I'm
supportive of
aware
our
of.
neighbors too, I guess.
There are large tracts of land, certainly, that will
Right.
be affected.
Yeah, I don't think that claims that it has to come through there. It's, we have put aside large tracts of land for
Right,
conservation.
Right, so those two should come in the same order, those last two. And let's go to the third one, so,
I don't have a problem with any of the other ones.
the third one, the one about adopted comprehensive master plans, et cetera. I mean, I'm not against it, but I don't know that it's a strong point. The other two, I think, are very strong.
I think it's actually very relevant, and the reason is that there are wetlands bylaws and land use controls that will be superseded.
Disregarded.
They're superseded, and that's a huge concern to me. It's actually one of my biggest concerns because it does bypass local rules and regulations.
Like I said, I'm certainly doesn't say anything I don't believe in. Well, what would somebody like to do with those three? I'll entertain a motion on those three, or if you want to take them individually.
As far as land,
Yes, thank you. You may want to sit in the front.
sorry.
We're kind of really friendly.
As far as land that it goes through, it appears to go through Maplewood Golf Course at this point. And then somebody just did an analysis that I saw today that said it goes through some town of Lunenburg land that's a 33-acre parcel. But I haven't been at my desk to figure out what land that could be. I'm guessing it might be near Reno, but Ramo? I don't know what that piece is.
Because I went through the parcels and I didn't see
it.
I certainly saw Prius's Tree Farm and some other properties along that corridor, but I didn't.
Yeah, I definitely looked at, the more recent maps a month ago, and then this just came to me today, so I didn't get a chance to see what parcel they could possibly be talking about. But it does go through some land that's
Owned by the town?
been, owned by the town, or it's within the zone. People have thought, based on reading reports, it could be the blast zone if there's a leak that ignites. But I haven't had a chance to look at what that could be. So it could be relevant, or it may not be. That I don't know which one that was.
Well, I don't.
Well, even if it doesn't, I mean,
Because this isn't specific to town land. It just talks about the fact that Lunenburg has adopted zoning bylaws, wetlands bylaws, master plans
Right.
to protect land. So it doesn't specifically talk about Lunenburg land, because all of those regulations apply to private land as well.
because isn't this
And-
designed to go under the Mulpis? or-
Directly under the
It
Mulpis.
goes right over the
That's-
Mulpis
so that would
water.
apply directly to
Right.
that.
It
goes right
applies
through the
directly
Mulpis.
to the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right.
And there was a recent letter put out by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners that documents all the problems with the maps as they exist in all of the areas that are violated
Right.
by that. And there are within Biomap 2, and it's called also CAPS, which is put out by the University of Massachusetts, areas that are considered critical need areas. And I think if you plotted a map of that along that route that goes by, that comes down, there are a few areas that are considered environmentally sensitive.
Right,
and
critical habitat areas that are adjacent to the proposed route.
including the Mulpis.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I would recommend that those three items go on the second page after the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, under the fifth paragraph, and just before now, therefore.
For now, therefore, okay, fair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Any other additions, changes, comments anybody want to make on this? If not, I would entertain a motion that we adopt this, but just make the motion, and before we actually have the vote, I will actually read it so everybody at home can read what we are voting on. So do I have a motion to adopt?
I move we approve as amended.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, so before we vote, here we go. It's a resolution to be adopted by the Lunenburg Board of Selectmen. Whereas Kinder Morgan has proposed a new 36-inch high-pressure gas pipeline through Massachusetts and New Hampshire as part of a Northeast Energy Direct project, hereinafter called The Project. And whereas the project also proposes a 12-inch high-pressure at 1,460 pounds per square inch natural gas pipeline, which it calls the Lunenburg Lateral.
The Fitchburg lateral.
Fitchburg Lateral, to be installed not in Fitchburg, but in Lunenburg, Townsend, and Mason, New Hampshire. And whereas Lunenburg is already crossed by a Kinder Morgan pipeline, hereinafter called the South Lunenburg Lateral, which runs from Lancaster to the proposed southern terminus of the Fitchburg Lateral. And whereas the southern Lunenburg Lateral has already caused financial damage to Lunenburg citizens, and whereas the completion of the project appears to create a connection between the proposed Fitchburg Lateral and the South Lunenburg Lateral, and whereas said connection could provide or would provide Kinder Morgan the opportunity to provide gas service to Worcester through Lunenburg, including a possible future addition of a compressor station in Lunenburg or other readaptation and reuse of the South Lunenburg Lateral. And whereas Kinder Morgan has been silent about its plans to create such a connection, despite its proposing a metering station in Lunenburg at the southern terminus of the proposed Fitchburg Lateral in its Resource Report 1 filed with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And whereas the currently proposed pipeline route was chosen in a private, closed process so that there has been no chance for open public discussion or debate of alternate routing possibilities and trade-offs, and whereas Kinder Morgan identified properties in Lunenburg that it intends the Fitchburg Lateral to cross, but declined to provide the town of Lunenburg with detailed and current information on the exact routing it is proposing. And whereas landowners are being asked to permit surveying on their property or to sign agreements to forfeit some of their property rights. And whereas federal eminent domain powers may be used to forcibly take pipeline easements from unwilling landowners. And whereas a high-pressure gas pipeline, by its nature, carries the potential for leak, rupture, or devastating explosion, causing untold damage to property and lives. And whereas said pipeline goes against current Massachusetts commitments to renewable energies and combating global climate change. And whereas our energy challenges are better addressed through investment in energy conservation measures, as well as green and renewable energy solutions. And whereas Lunenburg and our neighboring communities have adopted comprehensive master plans, zoning bylaws, wetland bylaws, and other land use controls to provide for the orderly development of our communities and the conservation and protection of our communities for future generations to come as good stewards of the land should. And whereas the elimination of environmental threats to our forests and streams from improvident development is the fundamental purpose for the adoption of our land use controls and master plans. And whereas Lunenburg and our neighboring communities have publicly and privately set aside large tracts of land and restricted their development for conservation and open space purposes as part of their master plans, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen in Lunenburg hereby declare it stands in opposition to Kinder Morgan's proposed Energy Direct project and to the Fitchburg Lateral, and stands in opposition to any effort to locate the proposed Fitchburg Lateral within Lunenburg's borders, and commits to participate in and provide comments to any meeting held under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission review process with regard to the proposed Fitchburg Lateral to oppose Kinder Morgan's application. And be it further resolved that the Board of Selectmen of Lunenburg hereby call upon our state and federal legislators and executive branch officers to enact legislation and take any other such action as are necessary to oppose such energy projects that go against our commitment to public safety, our environment, our economic well-being, and our sense of community.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Bertram.
Just one comment. When you read the statement, whereas said connection would provide Kinder, and you said could when you read it, I think we should change that to could, which is on the first page, the 6th one down.
Okay.
Because that is a could, not a would.
Well, either one I think is
But
applicable, but we can change
Yeah.
it to could.
And would it also be where it, on the second page, we put whereas federal eminent domain powers will be used?
Oh, I changed it
Change
to
that to
may.
May?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll change it to may. So is there any further discussion on the resolution which has been moved and seconded? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Can we get this as soon as we can on the website? Yes. Okay, so people can see it.
I'll have it tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. And just send it with the revisions to us. Okay.
And then this will go to the legislative delegation, the governor.
Right. Yeah, we
Department
should
of
send
Energy.
it.
Well, we'll set it up for signature,
Okay.
and, I mean,
send a letter,
if you're not in before Tuesday, I'll make sure to have it Tuesday for signature.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for your participation and continued observation of all the planning changes. So really is important.
There's a large group of people taking care of a lot
Well,
of that.
then, as the member who's here in front of us, please extend that to everybody who's involved with it. And I know it's not just one or two.
It's unfortunate that a company has put everybody in this position.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, review of the FY 2014 audited financial statements and management letter. This audit is done annually, where the independent auditors come in to review our financial statements and review our financial policies, procedures, and all the mechanisms we have in place to make sure that everything is kept sound and the policies are kept accountable. Every other year, the auditor presents his or her findings to this board in a televised session, and on the alternate years, provides their report to the FinCom. This year, it was delivered to the FinCom at the end of last annual year, in the end of end of 2014. It is not their job to provide grades or analysis of things that do not need attention. So by its very nature, the more succinct and the fewer items they identify, the better their findings are. And it's kind of, I remember when they started giving presentations here, beside being extremely, extremely dry, it was very difficult to come up with that, because I remember myself and other people asking, well, how is the town doing? It's like, well, we're not here as any kind of cheerleader or any kind of teacher marking grades. We're really just here to make sure that things are accounted for, and if they are, they do not make it into the report. I am pleased that to continuing our past reports, that this was indeed very, very sparse management report, wherein they provide an analysis. First of all the analysis of the financial statements were very thorough, and the findings for what they saw in those policies and procedures was, commented on as being very strong. There was nothing really to address on those reports. In the management report, where they basically detail their findings about things that need attention, that need further addressing, it's divided into two areas. Prior year comments, where they basically keep a running tally of what they have said in the past and what the town's progress has been. And when I say the town's progress, I'm really referring to the financial team. So the town manager, the town accountant, the treasurer's department, and everybody who has a say in how the finances of the town are run and kept and accounted for. There were several things that were taken off that list that were addressed. There were several that are ongoing and remain in their report. And the good part is that in current year, or in their topic, current year comments, only two things were added to that list. One of them, in their own words, is acknowledgement that the accounting practices of certain GASB numbers practices are not even going to be put into effect until starting in 2015. So outside of the last year's fiscal year, they just wanted us to be aware of it. So that is more of a heads up than it is an assessment of what we are already doing. And that means we really only had one additional item, which is, again, even from my limited experience with seeing these reports, is I think the least I have ever seen. So basically having one additional item means that in auditor speak, at least the way I interpret auditor speak, that the town is really led by an incredible and very detail-oriented, process-oriented financial team. I am saying these instead of the auditor because we didn't really want or need the auditor to come and do a full report after the report they gave to the FinCom. However, I think it is important, and many of us on the board, in fact all of us on the board, think it was important to report back to the people and the citizens of Lunenburg that their money is being managed in a very professional and precise manner with proper policies and procedures to protect against any unaccountability or any process that might go undetected. So everything is really, it was a glowing report in those terms. I looked through the initial executive summary letter itself looking for their own words, but as I said, they're very dry and they don't really offer congratulations or anything. It really is in their lack of comments where the results of the report show their real findings. So on behalf of that, I want to thank and commend the town manager, the town accountant, the treasurer, tax collector, all those people who have these, everybody who's doing everything from payroll to purchase orders and account managements for our vendors and health benefits and all of our benefits. That everybody has done a fabulous job and kept things very tight in a very tight ship and have really been great stewards of our money. So I want to publicly thank them and publicly congratulate them on a job well done and continued success for this coming fiscal year as well. I was not able to attend the FinCom meeting. I know some of our members were, and I don't know if they would like to comment as well, so I'll open up the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As the liaison to the Finance Committee, I did sit through the entire audit report, and as you said, it is very audit speak and dry, but they did go through each of the procedures that they had recommended in previous year, in the previous year, and what had been done about it, and what they found, and then they made recommendations, as you said, just two for the coming year. The Finance Committee reviewed each of them in detail and would also, I believe it's fair to say, share your accolades for the financial staff of the town and the fact that all procedures that were in place were followed in a very professional way, and even went so far as to say that they believe that along with other conscientious practices, have a lot to do with the financial stability of the town, the credit rating, and all the things that come from a successful management of the financial team.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that I was present for that meeting as well, and I considered it quite an education. The auditor's report I thought was glowing. They just kept saying, in every respect, the town's money is very well taken care of. And I look forward to it being televised next year so everyone can hear it.
I just have one comment and a question for the town manager. It looks like, as is often the case in a well-run organization, we're doing the right things, but in some cases we're not documenting the policy. And knowing how much time it takes to come up with policies and procedures and stuff like that, whether the accountant or the treasurer needs additional assistance from a consultant or somebody else like that to come up with some of these policies, I'd also volunteer to help in that regard if that's useful to the staff there. Certainly don't see any issues with what we're doing. It's more documenting to them. The second thing is, as Mr. Alonso talked about, is the future requirements that we're going to have to add to our balance sheet for future pension and retiree costs. has there been any conversation of whether that will affect our free cash, or is that going to strictly be on our balance sheet and not affect the availability of free cash?
It's not going to affect free cash. It's going to make our balance sheet look something less than what it is now, because we're going to have to recognize future expenses that we're not. So, for what that's worth, we're not a for-profit company, so our balance sheet doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. We're not going to have a negative, but there certainly will be a reduction based on that. Some of that work, or a lot of the work that's required in those two GASBs, are work that the retirement system will do and will provide to us, but we have a small amount of work that our auditors will have to do as well.
I certainly know that all the financial institutions know this is already a liability, and the fact that we're going to be putting it on the books actually probably will help us in some ways, because we're recognizing what we'll need to do in the future.
So right now, those liabilities show up in the notes, which is the back part of the financial statement. So it's not like they're not there, but they're in the notes section, and they need to be brought into the statements themselves. The one thing that I wanted to mention is in the financial statements, it's documented that there are no deficiencies to any of the work that we do. The management letter outlines opportunities to improve or to strengthen. They're suggestions, they're not requirements. We could go through and say, yes, it would be nice to do item 3, but the cost-benefit analysis says it doesn't make sense. So they're not necessarily things that we have to do. A number of them are things that we would like to do. The other thing to keep in mind is we receive the management letter. We got it early this year. We got it sometime in November. Typically, we get our statements the end of December or January, and they're going to reflect activity we do or progress we make from when we receive them, when they've documented it, to the end of the fiscal year. So there are a number of things that we've done that aren't reflected in the management letter because they're not looking at work that we've done after July 1st. We do have the opportunity to put comments in the management letter, and I have done that before in places I've worked, and I've talked to the town accountant and suggested that we should be doing that going forward, because we could document that in September we completed this task, so we're not waiting until another year. There are a few things in here that are treasurer specific, and so it's with the turnover that we've had in that position, we haven't really focused on some of these treasurer issues. For instance, there's a comment about writing off old receivables, general receivables, and some ambulance receivables. Well, it hasn't been a particularly high priority, and with the turnover, we haven't taken that up as an issue. So,
well, thank you for pointing those two things out, and also for Mr. Toll for commenting, at least in passing, something that I should have mentioned in my initial statement, which of course it's these kind of practices that have seen our credit rating be raised to AA+ and maintained and reaffirmed at AA+ when we went for the bonding of the school project, and at least the portion that we've already done. And I thank the town manager for mentioning the commentary on the financial statements where there was no deficiencies noted, which again is a very important aspect to us all as residents of the town or taxpayers of the town. So thank you. So now that brings us to your part of the financial parts, the review of the Q2 financial statements.
which may be equally dry.
Finance people got to spice things up.
I think it's already spicy.
No comments.
So in your packet, I have included copies of our revenue and expenditure reports through December 31st of 2014, and I've also included a narrative where I've highlighted a couple of things that I would like to call to your attention. Generally speaking, we're doing fairly well in fiscal 15, about as well as can be expected. These statements are reflective again of December 31st, and we've had a tough 3 weeks or so. So I've made some notes there, but through December 31st, we're looking pretty good. So in terms of revenue, December 31st is our halfway point, and we collected 49.81% of our budgeted revenues, which is very good. Taxes, we've collected 47.79% of the levy, and at this same time last year we had collected 47.72. So we're doing a little bit better than what we did last year, and still very strong on tax collection. State aid, we've collected just under 51% of our cherry sheet. This does include the Smart Growth School reimbursement, the 40S, which was just under $184,000. That was something that wasn't anticipated, and it wasn't included in our budget projections. So just to be fair, if you were to back that out, we've collected 48.2%. Last year, we collected 49.45% at the same time. The state's we don't have any indications that the state is not going to fulfill its commitment. The governor, even with the budget issues he's facing, said he would not balance that on the backs of municipalities. So I assume we will collect 100% of what we expect to in terms of state aid. And then in local receipts, we're doing fairly well. We have a few lines that we've collected higher than what we expected. Local options meals tax continues to do very well. We've collected 62.25% of our budget estimate, and we had bumped that estimate up from $65,000 to $85,000, and we're still collecting a little bit higher than that. So that is good news. School department revenue, we've collected 67.3% of what we budgeted. Investment income, almost 72%. Licenses and permits, 67.08%. So all of those are positive. In total, they're going to produce a fairly small surplus on a $31 million budget. Our penalties and interest line is running a bit under target at about 36%. Motor vehicle excise collections are low, but they're low because most of what we collect is billed and collected in the third quarter with that big commitment coming out any time now.
Q2, do you mean Q3?
Yes.
Okay.
Apologize for
No, that's
that.
okay.
We've also collected $52,000 in net metering credits revenue, and that represents about 4.5 months, so it's not a full 6 months because that project didn't go online right away. We didn't budget anything for net metering revenue because when we put the budget together this time last year, we didn't know when that project was going online, so we didn't know, we didn't put anything in there. So that's all extra for the bottom line of the budget. In terms of expenditures, if you set aside the snow and ice account, we're doing fairly well. As of December 31st, we had expended 45.5% of the budget. So we've collected just under 50 and we've expended just over 45. If you add in if you go and look at the expenditure reports will include encumbrances. So if you add in those encumbrances, we've expended 55.6% of the budget. The encumbrances are typically made at the beginning of the year for contracted services, and then they're made throughout the year when purchase orders are issued. So you'll see, I think we have about $3 million worth of encumbrances, which is what brings the total expended, if you include encumbrances, up to 55%. So there are several items that I wanted to mention. I don't think that any of these will come as a surprise because we've talked about them before, both here at the board level and at the finance committee level. Our police and fire vehicle maintenance, we expect that line to run over about $16,000. The finance committee has been advised, and there was actually a request made by both chiefs to the finance committee for a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $16,000 in total. The finance committee takes those requests under advisement. Their first directive to the department is to try to come up with the funding within your budget, but if you can't, we're on notice, and we will take that into consideration. But we've had to make some extraordinary repairs to some of our public safety equipment. Engine 4, Ladder 1, Rescue 2 have all had some fairly significant work done to them that wasn't anticipated. And then on the police side, we have a couple of cruisers with some high mileage that are still frontline, that are in need of more repair than something with less miles. And as we are changing over from the Crown Victoria to the Explorer, we have a number of parts that we had in stock for the Crown Vic because we operated that vehicle for so long, and now, we with the changeover, the expense is a little bit higher because we don't have parts on the shelf. We have to buy those. Utility costs are as much of a concern to the town as to residents. We, on the town side, have seen significant increases to our electric supply and natural gas supply rates, just like residents have. We have a consortium, a municipal consortium where we bid electric supply with a number of other communities. We don't participate in the town's plan. We have another one that we've participated in for years. John Londa from the school department is the manager of that contract. And in September, we were notified that our rates effective December 1st for natural gas would increase 14.5%, and that our electric supply rate would increase 53.7%. So very comparable, actually a little bit higher, I think, than we've seen through the municipal electric aggregation. Our rates are still a little bit lower. But what we found out is that upon further investigation, we were actually, for electric supply, being charged a rate lower than what our contracted rate was. And the supplier never asked to be made whole for that, but said, effective December 1st, you're going to the new rate, which is 11... I believe it's 1172, which I don't see it here, but I believe the number's 1172. So where we thought we were going to have a 53.7% increase, we're actually seeing something about 85%. And again, we put the budget together this time last year, and in September, well after the budget was developed, we were told that in December we would see this increase. So all of the municipal buildings, except for the library, those utility costs are paid out of DPW, for the facilities budget. They should be able to manage that increase within the budget this year, but there are going to be some reductions that need to be made. But our preference would be to manage that within the budget, because the existing appropriation, because we have to pay for all of this somehow. So where they think they have the ability to do that, I'm going to let them go with that. But the library does not feel that it has the ability to do that. So the Library Board of Trustees have approached the Finance Committee as well, advised them of this issue, and they have requested a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $15,000. I think that this is a high estimate, and I'm doing some work myself to look at it. whether this is high or not, they still can't manage anything. So we know we need to be able to mitigate that. Veterans benefits we've talked about before. As of December 31st, we've expended about $42,000 on a $25,000 budget. I do expect, based on the approved benefit applications that we have, that we will exceed the budgeted appropriation by at least $50,000. So this is significant. Now, this is the second year that we've had a significant increase in veterans benefits, and I think that will continue. The state does reimburse 75%, but in the following year, so we have to be able to fund it within the current fiscal year. School choice tuition. The state is reporting an additional 15.5 students from Lunenburg attending another public school under the choice program, 15.5 over and above what we thought were attending other schools. So the superintendent has been working very hard to see if these are real numbers or if there's been some mistake. But it doesn't appear that there has been a mistake. So this is a significant increase for us. Under the choice program, the tuition charge back to the town of residence is $5,000 per student, assuming it's regular education. If there's any special education component, then we can be charged over and above that $5,000. So if you assume $5,000 for 15 and a half students, that's $77,500. That's significant. The only good thing about this is the earliest we've ever been alerted to an issue with either choice or charter tuition. Typically, about a week after annual town meeting is when we find out, and there's no opportunity to do anything. And this is something that the state will just take, whatever we owe, the state takes off of our cherry sheet. So it's very difficult to deal with if there's any significant deficit at the end of the year, because we have to be able to manage it within that legal appropriation.
And how is it that we're made aware of it earlier this year?
Well, I think I do think the superintendent, she receives this data earlier than we do, because in the school attending report, she receives this, and she flagged it because it was so much higher than what she expected.
So when does she receive the school attending information?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I think October, November. So we were able to catch it at that level.
Is it one school in particular that they're one town?
It looks like most of these students are going to Air Shirley.
So it seems like maybe you could do something where you have an agreement with Air Shirley that they let you know how many students from your town are.
Well, there's a state reporting requirement, so that's how everybody finds out, I guess.
It all goes through the state,
Right.
and it comes back to us, right?
But it sounds like late.
Well, that's no surprise.
But I mean, like if you worked with the other communities, maybe you could have a reciprocal agreement. I'll tell you how many of your kids are in our school, you tell us how many. Because it shouldn't be a surprise. It's a lot of money.
It shouldn't be a surprise. What we seem to be seeing, based on what the superintendent mentioned, is these are students that have never enrolled in Lunenburg. So she wasn't aware of them, because it's not like they came here, they decided they could get something better, and they left. They just moved into town, and they never came here. So that's difficult, and that's why originally she thought this is just an error, because we don't even.
Right, you'd know that if they left, because there's a lot of paperwork that has to
Right.
move with a kid. But you'd think that there's got to be a better way.
I think there's a better way for a lot of things. I'm not sure. I'm happy we know about it now, because in the past where there hasn't been anything flagged, where, it was even just a few students. And in the past, it's been more with charter. We've had more issues with being surprised by charter than choice. So I'm just glad we know about it now, and we have town meeting to be able to make budget adjustments or whatever we need to do. Because after town meeting, it's very difficult to address. So the second to last is snow and ice. As of the end of the calendar year, we had expended 45% of the budget, which is typical because that's really for the purchase of supplies to get ready for the season. We had fairly minimal activity. We had a couple of sanding events before the end of the calendar year, but not much. Obviously, very heavy activity in this quarter that has already put us into deficit. I have a report from DPW that I also attached that was as of the beginning of this month, and we had essentially spent the budget, but that didn't include about $70,000 worth of estimated expenses related to the blizzard. There was a subsequent report done by DPW to submit to MEMA that shows that maybe that's 50 rather than 70,000. But that doesn't account for anything past the blizzard, and we've had however many storms. I don't know. I mean, this really is an estimate, but I can't imagine, based on the way we've been going, that we're going to see anything less than a $200,000 deficit in snow and ice.
I remember in one of your previous reports, you said how minimal activity we had.
Well,
and then it happened. Yeah, then it happened.
I don't think I caused it.
Okay.
I've caused many other things, but I don't think I caused that.
As a result of the school, the school list is what caused it. So.
Yeah.
And then the last item is health insurance. I had previously reported to you that I thought we would have a deficit of about $12,500 based on the retiree, January 1 retiree renewal, and an increased enrollment with regard to retirees, but that I think we're going to be fine. We've had a little bit of a reduction in enrollment for active employees, so I think that will be a wash, so that is good. So based upon current trends, I think we should expect to see a budget gap of at least $358,000 in fiscal 15. It's significant, but it's a $31 million budget, so we're talking about something just over 1%. So just to keep it in perspective. We obviously will be going through the budget. We go through the budget all of the time. We'll make whatever adjustments that we feel that we can without affecting services to see what we can make up. I hope we can make up everything but the snow and ice. I mean, I don't see that there's any hope that we can make up the snow and ice deficit. We do have free cash that is available for appropriation in the amount of $484,117. I will note that in the fiscal 16 budget, I am assuming use of $184,000 of that, because that is the 40S. It's not the same money. The 40S that was received in fiscal 15 in the current fiscal year will become part of certified free cash available July 1st after town meeting. But knowing that we have that, I'm assuming that we're going to use that as a funding source for the budget, rather than wait and see if we get some funding again in September or October and then try to make an adjustment to the school budget at a fall town meeting, which is not particularly helpful to the school. So if that snow and ice deficit creeps up to $300,000, I'm going to be nervous because I'm not sure how we're going to address that. I did mention the balance in the stabilization fund is $1,604,747. That's 5%. So if there was ever a thought to take anything out of the stabilization fund, that brings us below 5%, which is our what our financial policies say we should be at.
Thank you. Any questions for the town manager on that review? Okay, minutes, none. Warrants. Accounts payable in the amount of $262,329.27. Payroll in the amount of $637,513.93. And payroll deductions in the amount of $500,707.07.
Thank you.
Action file issues. None. Committee reports, Board of Health.
Canceled due to snow?
Everybody raise their hand if that's what happened to you. Building reuse,
Nothing since the last meeting.
Capital Planning,
No report.
Finance Committee,
No report.
Library Board of Trustees.
Library Board of Trustees met last week to discuss energy efficiency opportunities and working with the green communities. They added an additional meeting in order to do that.
Okay. MPO,
No report.
Planning Board, PAC.
Snow, they're rescheduled for February 25th.
Okay, I'll take this opportunity again. We're still two members short on the PAC, so I'm gonna, for those of you who are viewing, if you want to get rid of this particular announcement every week, please volunteer.
And one on FinCom.
And one on FinCom still, yes. School Committee.
The school committee is holding a workshop tonight with guests, the principals of the 3 schools, and Steve Malandrinos, the IT director. The topics include the one-on-one computer initiative at the high school and naming the new high school. New business scheduled for the canceled 2-4 meeting will be on the agenda, I assume, for the 2/25 meeting at Passios. They're not having a meeting during the school vacation week. The fiscal 16 school choice openings, they recommend up to 10 in each of grades 8 and 9. Kindergarten age siblings of students currently enrolled under choice. Grade 11 and 12 students whose families have moved from Lunenburg, but the kids want to graduate with their classmates. And the superintendent will provide an update regarding enrollment and school attending. I guess that must be that report at that time. She's working currently to finalize the FY15 school attending report. There have been 2 donations from the Lunenburg Cultural Council, $1,000 for the African Art and Education Program and month-long display of art at the primary school, and $675 toward the Plymouth Plantation field trip for 3rd graders.
Thank you.
And Kerry and I are going to meet next Thursday with Mo from Mark to try to get that new route rolling.
Excellent. School Building Committee meets tomorrow. Sewer Commission.
Sewer Commission is meeting tonight.
Okay. Town Manager reports or updates? None? No interviews. I do have an announcement. Last week, we don't have an executive session this week, but under last week's executive session, we discussed the town accountant's contract. There was a wage opener in her contract, and I just want to report that it was offered and accepted that the town accountant be given an annual salary increase of 2.5%. So that is for this fiscal year. So we appreciate all the hard work that the town accountant has done over the many years she's been in that role, and want to show our support to her with this offer, and thank her for her acceptance, and wish her continued good success in the town of Lunenburg.
It was so nice that you put in that she loves the work she does. How lucky for us.
Exactly. So I'll send this down and we can sign it. And, okay, so next week's meeting will not be a Board of Selectmen meeting, as I announced earlier. It will be the FinCom meeting, and it will be the town manager's presentation of the FY16 budget, and we will be televised. We will be posted as well, because I'm sure that most of us, or if not all of us, will be here, and we'll post just in case we have any warrants and other things to sign at that point. But really, the meeting will be the FinComs. Any final public comment from the board this evening? Any final comment from the public? Okay, try to stay warm, try to stay dry, and whoever's shaking the snow globe, quit it. We'll see.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.